And my hypothesis is that you can't fake the human element. The human element has to be there. People buy from people. And my hypothesis is in 3 years, they're all going to be hired back. They're going to have a new motion of SDRing.
Ooh. Welcome back to another episode of the Revenue Reimagined podcast. You are not getting this early in the year, but this is our first recording for 2025. We are so excited to have Lindsey Boggs with us today, who is the VP of Global Business Development at DG Matrix, a TED speaker, Forbes 30 Under 30, 4 times Salesforce Top Influencer, who just launched her own consulting business last week, which we're going to talk about. And little fun fact, you see that basketball behind her? She actually beat Shaq in a free throw contest. That to me is reason alone to have you here. Lindsay, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, both of you. I appreciate it.
Lindsay, I know we've been working on this for a little while, and I'm super grateful you're here. I got to know you way early in a bit of my career and your career with Larry Long Jr. and the stuff we were doing at Pendo through some training pieces. But now that you kind of evolved and you're starting up your own consulting group, tell us a little bit about what's the thing you like most about go-to-market and what really lights your passion around go-to-market?
Yeah, my biggest passion around go-to-market is a lot of folks don't even know where to start in terms of go-to-market. And what you'll find is that once you start peeling back the onion, so to speak, they actually do have the tools in their toolkit to do it. They just didn't know how. And so I love, expressing to folks, you had this all along. Here's a time to leverage it. And here's how you use this tool, or here's how you use your voice, or here's how you build your brand. So for me, it's more educational. I love educating people on what they didn't even know they knew they could do.
It's funny. I feel like, especially in the consultant world, right? And the leadership world, that's such a big part of our roles is that education piece. And you said something that is near and dear to my heart, is something they didn't even know you could do. When you think you can't sell this way, or you can't achieve this goal, or you can't do this, and you have that aha moment, and we get to witness that, it's so incredibly powerful. But you talked about people don't know where to start. And this is normally one of our last questions we ask, but I'm going to flip it and bring it up here. A lot of times we'll ask folks at the end of the show, when building go-to-market, where do you start? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it success? Is it where do you start? And there's probably a little bit of variability, but from your mindset, you're going into a new company. Let's just say they have a little bit of revenue, but they're broken, right? As most companies are, sadly. Where do you start?
The first place I start always is listening to customer calls. So give me that gong access, give me that chorus access, give me whatever you're using to record your calls, give me that access so I can listen. The worst thing you can do is start at a company and, be told, okay, day 2, you're on the phones doing cold calls. I see how that can be effective, but I also am more of a storyteller. When I want to cold call or cold email or, warm outreach on LinkedIn, if I don't understand how my customers are being successful with this platform or wherever you're working, you can't storytell. And so the first place I go is the customer calls. And at this company I'm at now, DG Matrix, that's the first place I went. I was like, add me to every customer call. I need to understand how we're being leveraged. And then I need access to our recording. So
how can you make cold calls if you don't know what to sell? The value prop, what I've seen, the value prop that the founder or CEO typically gives you is normally at first this long-winded 3-paragraph, 5-minute sentence that is a run-on sentence versus I want to hear from the customers why they bought. Conversely, I want to hear why they didn't buy. And I joke about this, and Dale makes fun of me for this. I literally have a Post-it in front of me on my computer that is, what's the number one problem your product solves for your prospects and customers in under 15 seconds? Very few people can answer that. So I love that you start there.
That's where I start. And one of my most successful trainings that I've done at multiple companies, I've done this at least at 5 companies, is once I onboard an SDR or AE or CXM, the list is long. I have a About 10 people that I'm really close friends with that have bought from me that have become friends. They started out as a prospect, then they became a friend,
Mm.
and I will bring them onto a Zoom, and I will have the team that I'm managing, leading, send them a cold email in a Word doc or whatever, Google Sheet. I will send it to the prospect beforehand, and then the prospect will show up to the Zoom unannounced. They don't know they're going to be there. The team doesn't know they're going to be there. And I will say, here's your prospect live in the flesh. And I will have that prospect rate their emails or rate their voicemails or rate their cold calls. And they do it live. And at first the team is panicked. They're like, oh my gosh, like I have a real prospect here. He's the CEO of, XYZ company. I better not screw up. And then they're like, okay, I can ask you questions. And that's been the best. Like I've done a lot of surveys on my enablement in the several years I've been doing it. And that has been my number one most coveted training program is that exercise alone.
I love that.
Yeah, it's super cool. But there's something inherent that you were like that process that you were just talking about started with delivering value for a customer, making sure that you enabled that relationship. And now they feel to a place of, I want to help Lindsay. I want to help her team get better. Like, I think there's this fundamental challenge in the sales world that we all like you have to do 100 calls or you have to do all these calls and less about like the quality of what you're trying to produce. And I love what you were trying to do, like build the relationship, have that for a long period of time, because when we look to hire people, I always think of three things. Can you just grind? Like there's a lot of work that goes around selling, all the things you were kind of talking about in the selling space and enablement. There's integrity. Like, do you sell properly? Like, can you sell what you have in your bag, and can we deliver that value? And I think that's some challenge that we were just talking about before this in the tech space. Like the products aren't delivering what we're selling. And then the last part of it is like, are you coachable? And like, I love that, like coachability and like the coaching part of it. So from the gong calls, from bringing prospects I've never heard of that. And I love it because like they have to realize like, we're just people. Like it's just a conversation. How you get to that person out of the conversation is completely different. And you've done that by the relationships.
Right.
But since you've been in enablement, what's the biggest challenge that you see when you're starting to onboard people? Because I think the reason why most sales people are failing or sales teams are failing is because they're never onboarded. Like kind of what you said,
Yeah.
2 days in, it's like, go do cold calling. And it's like, so what's like 2 or 3 things people can do to get prepared to onboard somebody?
Yeah. I've onboarded so many people, and I can tell you what I see the most in the terms of why they fail is they're not studying. They're not taking their own time out of their day to rehearse, to inform, to listen, to go to that gong library. And the way I like to explain it to people that I onboard is, look, you may have just spent XYZ amount of money on university. You paid to get educated. I am paying you to learn now. So I had to flip the script on them a little bit and kind of tone it to a point where I am paying you to learn this product, to learn this pitch, to learn this, methodology of sales, right? So once they grasp that and figure that out, that, hey, I have 8 hours in my day to perform, I can take an hour or two and listen to gong calls because that's what Lindsay wants me to do. So I learn, I can spot it the first week if they're going to be successful.
Take it one step further though. Like some of the best sellers I know have started off with the mindset of, and even continued with the mindset until they have a really good coach of like, I'm the best seller, right? Like I don't need to train. Like look at Shaquille O'Neal, look at Steph Curry, look at Michael Jordan. What do they do all day, every day when they're not on the court? They train. So when you're not on the phone with a live customer, when you're not building that proposal, what should you be doing? You should be learning and training and practicing to get better and better and better. I could not agree with you more. But no one does it. And I think that's why when you have folks like yourself who come in and can show them the benefits of why. And I love the mindset of like, I'm actually paying you to do
Mhm.
this and get better. I
Mhm.
think that's a really good way to word it. Really good takeaway. Lindsay, you've done a lot of really cool things, right? Things that like transparently I'm envious of. Like the TED speaker, I think is awesome. The Salesforce stuff, Dale laughs at me, but I like accolades like that. I think all that stuff is cool. What stands out to you? Like, what's the one you're proudest of? That's like, wow, like holy moly, I did this.
That's a great question. My kids were asking me that a couple nights ago at dinner, and I'd have to say that it's twofold. The proudest there's two categories to this, really. The first is I'm proudest when I get a text from a former person on my team, whether it be an SDR, AE, what have you, when I get a text years later after I've
Mm.
worked with them. And the text is just like, hey, Lindsay, it's Trent. I just want to let you know I just got my first director role. And I'm getting chills right now, like thinking about that, because I just got a text like that last week. And, just how appreciative they are of me, and how they might have been in a cohort with 9 other people, but I remember them. I remember certain people. Try to remember everybody, to be honest, but sometimes names get confused, what have you. But that is the single most thing that gets me up every morning for work. And then the second thing is going back to the Shaq thing. Like I'm 6'1". I've never played basketball in my life. I rehearsed on my driveway before I flew to Vegas. I threw 20 free throws in. I got maybe one in. And my husband was like, that Shaq can't throw free throws either. So you're going to be fine. He's like, you don't have to get them in. And I was like, yeah, the plan is not to get them in. The plan was always for him to like dunk it when I missed. But then when I got on stage, somehow Lindsey Boggs, the basketball player, appeared and I got both of them in under pressure. So I work very well under pressure. And that was a single key moment where I was just like, dang, okay, I can get 2 free throws in. 2,000 people are watching me. So that's a separate thing. But
That's awesome.
those are my 2 proudest moments, I'd say.
I love that. When you talk about like those folks coming back to you, I think Dale and I talk about this a lot whenever we get those texts. And I agree with you. There is nothing more rewarding than the out of the blue, like, hey, I got this. And I just remember something you did to help me get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get chills thinking about it, to be honest.
And I think as you transition into this new journey, Lindsay, with the consulting side of the world and what you're doing for a lot of these companies, like you're going to be able to provide that like really strategic feedback to them that sometimes you can't always say, like when you're in the company. Like we get to this all the time and when we're working with our clients, where you can almost have more transparency to the people because like they're really trying to pay you to get to like really where their problems are versus like you have to play politics and like a bunch of other stuff that happens internally. So I think that'll be really transformative for you because I like those conversations later as well. Switching up a little bit, when we first were doing some training at Pendo and talking about LinkedIn and like I remember like we were talking about like social selling, like this was like some like groundbreaking thing. And like people are still trying to go through this evolution of like social selling and, having these conversations. What's the next place where people should really be focusing their time and energy? Like you still got to do some stuff on LinkedIn and post and all that stuff. But what are some other things that you're seeing in the market from an enablement perspective to help salespeople be better?
AI, and I know that's probably not what everyone wants to hear on this call, but AI has been incredibly profound for the sellers that I coach. Thinking just about how long it used to take to go through a 10K or go through an earnings call. Have the tools that are out there are phenomenal to help you. And I don't consider it it's not necessarily a shortcut. It's just leveraging your time better.
Yep.
So if I have a
100%.
tool that allows me to give it to me in layman's terms, like why not leverage that? So
100%.
That's the biggest thing I've seen in the shift. And I worry a lot of companies transparently are cutting SDRs and replacing with AI. And my hypothesis is that you can't you can't fake the human element. The human element has to be there. People buy from people. And my hypothesis is in 3 years, they're all going to be hired back. They're going to have a new motion of SDRing. Because right now I'm just seeing SDRs get cut and, have AEs do full cycle, prospect, close, all the things. And I think they're really missing out on having that human element of that first touch.
People buy from people. That's why companies who invest in meaningful connections win. The best part? Gifting doesn't have to be expensive to drive results, just thoughtful. Sendoso's intelligent gifting platform is designed to boost personalized engagement throughout the entire sales process. Trust me, I led sales for a Sendoso competitor, and I could tell you, no one does gifting better than Sendoso. If you're looking for a proven way to win and retain more customers, visit sendoso.com.
Is there a place in the ARR space where you should have an SDR versus not have an SDR? Like, what's too big or what's too small to have SDRs, or is it a timing on the close? Like, I always think in my head, if you're under 40K, there's some transactional nature in that makes it almost very difficult to have a BDR. But I'm just curious your perspective on, just getting in my head as you were talking.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Dale, on that. I'd say, I've worked at companies where we've had SDRs for SMB, and it just makes things go more smoothly because they're able to qualify and send it over to the AE and then to close it. I'd say if you're like a really small startup, that will come later, having an SDR. But I think for looking at career development as well, there's so many missed opportunities having SDRs learn. And that's why I coach SDRs. Yeah. You've got to be continuously learning, because when there's an opening for an AE or there's an opening for a CSM, or I've seen a lot of people go this way to account management lately from SDR. When there's an opening, I don't want your name to be read when they get to the interview. I want their name to be recognizable. You've already done the mentorship. You've already done the outreach to that hiring manager. You don't want to be, oh, I don't know who this person is. They work here? Oh, okay. You have to already be in the system.
Yeah. And if you're executing at a high level, at a SDR level, of course you're going to have that. I always thought that, if you have, it's a bad analogy, but the bullpen, and it's okay, you have everybody, but you can see who is actually doing the work. First of all, how are you doing the work? How are you educating? Are you coachable? You already have all that stuff. And by definition, they'll filter out the people that don't. So
for sure.
The SDR role historically, I've always said, is one of the hardest roles, right? And I think AI is going to change a lot for that role, but I think it's going to still have it be one of the hardest roles. Now, SDRs don't have to spend their time, if you're doing it right, SDRs should not be spending their time building lists, reading 10K reports, to your point, Lindsay, going to dig all this information. It doesn't mean they don't need the information, they don't need to read it. Let the AI summarize it for you so you could be properly prepared and not have to spend time researching. But you still are the person who has to be that first impression, get that person on the phone or to respond to that email, and provide that value so they want the demo. I think it's going to increase the value of the SDR role from what it was, which was historically in a lot of people's mind, oh, you're the researcher and you just make cold calls, to you are that first face. And I think we're going to see SDR salaries increase, and the value of that role become much more important than it was in the past. I'm curious, when you think about AI and RevOps and business development, where do you think go-to-market teams are going to go specifically with, are we going to see heads of AI, heads of go-to-market infrastructure that's different than RevOps? Where do you see it going with the tech stack and how AI builds into that?
Great question. The last company I was at, we actually had a dedicated person working solely on AI, and they dotted line, they were technically on my team. I led the SDRs and go-to-market commercial enablement. And they were on my team, and they sort of dotted line to RevOps as well. So I'm seeing kind of a mixture of where they could land. I see the value in having them on the enablement side, because what they're learning and the GPTs they're enabling the teams on makes sense to have them in enablement. But there's also this element of RevOps. How do we tie in what we're learning about these accounts to your CRM? So I see it in both avenues, to be frank.
And I do see this AI pendulum, I'll call it. I do believe every market, every change is going to be a pendulum, and we're going to swing way the other way. Like we hired a bunch of SDRs, and we fired a bunch of SDRs, and the same thing on the sales side. Like I think a lot of people are like, well, we can just do more with less, and I think we could do more with less if the people that are doing it are doing the like doing the learning, going through the process. Like you still need to learn how to prompt engineer. Like you still have to learn how to like utilize and use some of these tools. Once again, going back to, I keep going back to like, as we were thinking about social selling, it's not like we didn't know how to social sell. We just got on LinkedIn and like we're writing stuff and like putting stuff, like, you were just testing and trying things. And I think it's the same thing with AI right now. Now, just like we were talking about in the practice, the top 1, 2, 5% will be doing this work, and they'll be completely fine, and they'll make a ton of money, and they'll be sought after all over the place from all the different companies. The where we're going to lose people are the people that aren't going to do the work. They're not going to learn. They're not going to go through the education process. They're not going to fail, right? Because you're going to go through these failing processes. So it brings me to my question on what, because you're training so many people, and you can, like you said, you can kind of spot them within like a day, like are they going to be successful or not? How do you help the people that you don't think are going to be successful, but they have the drive to kind of go through that process? Like, do you kind of guide them towards a different path in their journey?
Yeah, what I do is I put together a survey that I send out to every person in commercial, all the AEs, all the SDRs, etc. And it's a skills gap analysis that I put together, and it's with a Google form, super simple. And I have them rate themselves on where they feel that they are on, let's say, objection handling as one scale of 1 to 5. How do you rank yourself? If they rank themselves a 4 and their manager rates themselves as a 2, there's a gap. So I take that. I'm a big Excel wizard. I do the delta, the conditional formatting, and then I look at the bottom and I say, okay, VP of account management, it looks like you have a big gap on your team on customer stories. Here's the playbook I made for customer stories. When can we get them re-enabled, right? So then I also pair that person that's struggling with customer stories with a superstar that's excellent at that, that's been rated top by me, by them and their manager, and partner them with like a buddy system to help them as well. So I'm not thinking, oh, it's a lost cause, you're done. I'm thinking, okay, here's the gap, here's the data to support the gap. Let's fix this however we can. And then if they're not willing to work and do it, then that's a separate conversation that you have probably with somebody outside of my department.
Sure. HR.
Yeah.
The willing to work. I mean, Dale, you said it early. It's being coachable, right? It's probably the number one skill set that I look for no matter what the role. I've hired from BDRs all the way up to VPs of sales, and like no matter what it is, you need to be coachable. Dale certainly doesn't hesitate to coach me daily. So we all have to be willing to take.
Although Lindsay has said you have a couple of great questions, which usually it doesn't happen in these. So
I mean, listen,
we'll give you a start for the day.
Occasionally I show up and I actually add some value. If I start to do it too often, you're going to have this expectation that every meeting we're on, 100%. I'm going to add value instead of just sitting there and multitasking. So let's be real with one another.
Back to coachability, one of the things I do in all of my interviews is I do a coaching section of my interview. And what I do is they don't know that it's happening before the interview, but I have them pick their favorite TV show or movie. And I ask them, what streaming platform is it on? And they'll tell me it's on Hulu. And I'll say, okay, great. And then I'll tell them, I've never seen that show before. And I'll ask them to cold call me as Lindsay and tell me why I should watch the show Breaking Bad. I've never seen it. And so what I'm looking for now, I'm not asking them to be, I don't want them to be perfect. What I'm asking for them to do is do this role play with me. Then after that, I will ask them, are you open to feedback? If they say yes, that's a good sign.
If they say no, that's the last interview they have.
That's the last interview. Then after I give them the feedback, I say, okay, we're going to do this again, Adam. and we do it again. And if they've improved from the first time and they've taken what I, gave them for feedback and they've implemented it, I know that they're more coachable than somebody that doesn't. Now, look, I've hired hundreds, maybe thousands of people in my career. I have hired some bad seeds. I haven't gotten it 100% right. I don't think anyone has it 100% right, but it does help me. And there was even one person that was so irritated about this role play that they dismissed themselves from the interview. And I was like, okay, well, that helped save me a lot of time, you know?
That's crazy to me, because as you're telling the story and like you saw my reaction, like we do a lot of role play, right, in interviews. Mm-hmm. I love this because it's deeply personal to the person. Like we all have our shows that we're super passionate about. Yeah. You should be able to, off the top, it's much different than, I hate to say sell me this pen, but like sell me any product.
Yeah.
You don't have to prep. You don't need a deck. I'm totally going to steal this in full transparency. I think it's absolutely great. If someone has an issue with that, I can't imagine how they feel about some of the other questions all of us would ask in an interview.
And the point of it is I don't want them to inundate themselves like by over studying on what our platform does, because they're gonna be confused. They're not gonna know the ins and outs. So just tell me something.
And they're gonna be nervous because I've never sold this. I don't know this.
Right.
I love it.
I would rather them sell me something that they know a lot about. So.
Or you ask them to talk about their product, and it's like you don't know their product, so then you go research that.
Sure.
I'll give a quick tip on coaching, is like coaching interview questions as well. Usually, what I'll do is I'll give feedback after the interview, whether they like it or not. I give them feedback, and if I progress them to the next stage, I will tell the next interviewer, I told them, I gave them this coaching piece. Make sure that you're testing on this coaching piece, because if they go to, like, if I interview and they go to Adam, I'll say to Adam, hey, I tested on, make sure you test on this. And if they don't change their perspective on it, then they don't move forward. Like the coaching part is very hard to actually test on, but I like your perspective on it.
Yeah, 100%. Was it on me, Dale? Is it my turn?
You've had all the good questions today, so yes.
I have. And sadly, we are coming up on time. But what I would love is to play a little bit of rapid fire. Just throw some questions out. Here's the rules. You get 10 words or less to answer. Otherwise, if you go over, I get to bop Dale next time I see you.
All right. 10.
So feel free to go over as much as you want.
All right. Sounds good.
Because every time.
Okay.
First app you check when you wake up.
First app I check when I wake up. LinkedIn.
Yeah, of course. So this is a bit of a cheat because I know your husband works at Epic Games. Besides Fortnite, what's your other favorite game from Epic? Or
Lego Fortnite.
Lego. Okay.
So I just saw that your husband works at Epic. Specifically on Fortnite. And as I was like, my kid happened to be next to me when I was scrolling. He's like, you know someone who works on Fortnite? He's a huge Fortnite fan.
Well,
I'm like,
sounds
yes,
like
I do.
I should probably mail you some swag.
Oh my, yes, he would die. Huge fan. The amount of money I've spent on Fortnite is very sad. Early bird or night owl, Lindsay?
I'm becoming more of an early bird.
Okay.
Becoming.
My daughter has to be at school at 6:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's just like, that's just what I do now.
I love it. Yeah. Dale sends emails at 6:10 in the morning. I'm like, dude, I'm still rolling over in bed.
It was funny. My daughter came in this morning and I was doing some emails. She asked me the same question. She's like, how are you doing emails? So if you weren't in tech, Lindsay, or you weren't even in sales, what trade would you do besides sales, go to market, tech?
If I could go back and redo it, I'd be a journalist.
Yeah, nice. I love
totally
that.
Makes
I want
sense.
to be the next Diane Sawyer, but my time has come and gone, I think.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure snack?
Rice
Krispie treats.
Nice.
My son we make those all the time. He's like, can we make Rice Krispie treats? I'm like, okay.
So good.
Last one. Let's wrap this one up. Dream vacation destination.
Moria, Tahiti.
Nice.
Ooh, very nice. I love that. Very nice. Mm-hmm. Lindsay, thank you so much for coming and hanging with us, for sharing your words of wisdom. Where obviously people can find you on LinkedIn. It is LinkedIn /in/
Lindsey Boggs with an E.
Look how easy. Awesome. Lindsay, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.